Yo, it's Eddie Ortega. Today we are talking about the importance of balancing our creative practices with ambitious projects, okay? I think in the online art communities, there's this really strong tendency for us to be focusing on the academic, studious sort of practice side of things. And all of our artistic practice is just training, studying. And in turn, this makes it so that by over-focusing on training and fundamentals, we can get completely stuck and basically stop growing. And so I think one of the great things that you can do for your art practice, something that I'm learning myself, is to pair your practice with a nice, solid, ambitious project that you've always wanted to do. Because with this, you can actually use the project as a way to guide you into figuring out where you need to spend your time studying, where are your weaknesses, so that you can continue to push forward something that feels a lot more like an ambition or a personal thing that gets you really excited. Before we go further, I want to show you these drawings that I've been working on because they're basically a point-in-case example of this thing that I'm talking about. Check these out. Now, for me, these drawings represent something very special. I've always wanted to make a sort of comic book or be able to tell a story through images, and it's something that I've never given myself permission to do because I've always felt like I just need a little more practice. I need a little bit more training. I'm not quite ready yet. And just in recent days, I decided to give it a shot, and I've been floored by the results. I honestly kind of can't believe that I drew these. They represent the culmination of a bunch of different skills that I've been needing to practice for a while that I was basically putting off because I wasn't getting started on the project. So check this other one out. This is so awesome. Like I'm very happy because I've actually practiced figure drawing and drawing bodies for a very long time from reference and from life. And yet I could never put together how to translate that study into actually making these stories that I wanted to tell. And so this is the main reason why I'm proposing that we need to learn to pair our learning with projects early on. I have spent so much time trying to figure out how to do these figure drawings, but the thing that's kind of funny about it is that the core skill that I needed in order to make these comic book pages was actually the ability to imagine bodies in space, in perspective, but from my head. Unlike drawing from reference and unlike studying the human anatomy, and those are very valuable and useful skills that I've also needed to build up, the main thing that I needed was a skill that I was basically not even practicing effectively. I was practicing how to interpret the body from what I was seeing, but imagining a scene or imagining a moment and then figuring out, seeing in my head how those bodies look in space without a reference is the actual core skill that I needed in a comic book. And basically, at some point, I basically allowed myself, let me just go ahead and start trying. Let me think of a scene or a moment, or I wrote a short little script. And immediately I was faced with the challenge of, oh, I need to see this shot in my head. What do I have to do in order to do that? And that sort of process of having a project, a tangible thing that I'm trying to make, basically allowed me to then go back to my practice and really hone in that skill. Basically choose the correct practice for me. So instead of drawing from reference or drawing from life, the practice for me was doing the classic mannequin box body exercise and doing that a whole bunch of times so that until I could basically imagine a head, if I had to say, okay, from above or from the front or from the side, this kind of approach where we identify what we're trying to do and what skills we need in order to build them can create a much more virtuous cycle that is more refreshing and more engaging, because now I can work on my project until I get stuck, and then instead of getting stuck and demotivated, that becomes the signifier of like, oh, this is the next little thing I need to work on in order to unlock myself so I can keep making progress. So I can bounce back to the practice, figure out what I need to figure out, come back to the project, and moving between these spaces, first of all, is way more fun. You get stuck on one thing and you can move to the other. But second of all, it's just more engaging, and it actually leads to better and bigger growth. Because at the end of the day, it's during the project itself that you're putting all of those skills to the test and wrapping them together into something that connects all the dots to deliver something. Now, if I were to just go practice that skill by itself, there could be a tendency to get obsessed in making the practice itself look good. If you look at these sketches that I'm showing you here, you can see that by themselves, these aren't really that impressive. I'm not making these studies for their own sake. I'm making them in service of this idea that I'm trying to create. So by themselves, they don't look like much. But for my personal learning, they represent that ability, that skill that I needed in order to put together a comic book page. So don't get stuck in the trap. Don't just spend all of your time practicing and studying. If you have a big ambition or a big goal or a big dream, throw yourself at it from time to time and test yourself and see how far you've come and what else do you need to work on next. Fun little analogy. I don't know if I'll keep this in the video, but I just want to share this. Lately, I started playing this game called Elden Ring, which, if you don't know about games, I don't know. It's just a very, very hard game where you fight really difficult bosses. But if you know, you know. And this is not usually my type of game, but but I wanted to share it because it's a perfect analogy to this experience. They throw you into a world that is just vast and open and give you zero guidance whatsoever. But they do this very clever thing in the game's design where basically they put impossibly difficult bosses up front early on in the starting areas of the game, just so you can basically get wrecked, just so you can get completely destroyed. And you don't have to fight them, but what tends to happen is most people naturally move towards them, naturally take on this challenge and find that they cannot beat them at all. And this is a very, very clever thing that's done from a game design standpoint, because what they're doing is they're showing you that eventually you can get to that. Eventually you could take care of that, but not yet. You're not there right now. And so this experience of losing early on in the context of a game is supposed to motivate you and supposed to teach you like, oh, I need to go out and train and I need to go figure out what it is that I need to do to come back to that big challenge. And, you know, this is essentially what I feel I've learned to start doing with my projects. Is this a long-winded version of me excusing myself for playing too much Elden Ring lately? Maybe. But in all honesty, jokes aside, I just think it's a perfect parallel to this thing that happens to us. So, all right. I hope that's useful to you. I know that I get stuck in this cycle a lot, so I felt that it would be useful to share it because YouTube is full of videos on how to improve your art skills. But it's a little more nebulous to capture how do I get closer to my dream? How do I move my art projects closer to reality, right? So if that's of use to you, let me know about it in the comments. Maybe you have a particular approach to this that you'd like to share with me. I'd love to hear it. And otherwise, if you want to stay connected with this art journey that I'm on, please follow my channel. I myself, I'm going to go back to drawing and maybe playing a little bit more of Elden Ring and see if I can actually make any progress in this extremely hard game. I'll see you on the next one. Ciao.